Upon arriving at Zula's escape this summer, we found a wee nest in the bough of a red pine right next to our back deck. In this nest were 3 Charlie Brown eggs, tended to by a devoted mother and father. I couldn't get a good enough picture to be able to identify the little birds with my sea cap, and Merlin didn't recognize their shrill little chirps, so I resorted to the old school method of looking through a bird book. I narrowed it down to a warbler, but there are millions of warblers. Eventually, with the help of the ultimate bird nerds, the grandmas, we settled on the black-throated green warbler. Only 2 of the eggs hatched, and they were hungry little buggers, keeping their parents busy feeding them night and day. One morning I awoke to a cacophony of unending peeps from the parents who were calling from the forest. Was it moving day, I wondered? Just then a whir of brown feathers flew into the nest and away. It seemed slightly larger than the parent birds, and I feared that it had snatched one of the nestlings. I investigated, and to my relief, both of the little fuzzies were still in the nest. But just then, one of them flopped and flew onto the deck. Had I precipitated this? The father flew in, a green caterpillar writhing in its beak, and attempted to draw its offspring to safety. They say that observation itself changes the outcome of the observed object, and this is especially true if the observer is a blundering hairy ape with various electronics at its disposal. Had I ruined all the hard work of those loving parents? I donned some gloves and plucked the little fuzzball off the ladder, placing it gently back in the nest, now empty, as its sibling had subsequently flown the coop. It immediately flew off into a nearby bush. Further investigation on the internets led me to believe that it had indeed been the time for these fledglings to fledge, and now the parents would continue to shepherd them as they learned to fly. But why were the parents now off in the forest, away from their fallen peeps? Being the meddling ape that I am, I went to investigate. Their furious chirping led me deeper into the forest. Oh my, I thought, only my brain used several profanities instead. It was a broad-winged hawk, sitting heroically, stoically, on a branch, ignoring the incessant warbling around it. Now I would be meddlesome. As I approached, the hawk, unperturbed by the little menaces, was perturbed by this large mammal approaching. It flew to a nearby tree. I followed, and it flew to another. I followed again, and so did the agitated warblers. The flustered hawk sat, harried now by 2 warblers and a strange 2-legged creature. And something else. Another small bird. Was it the brown bird I had seen before? Was it now harassing the hawk as well? The hawk had had enough. It flew off through the Stygian woods. The warblers and I returned, only to find that one of the fledglings had also returned, hopping and flying along the ground under the deck, over the perilous stretch of open lawn, past the fire pit, and onto a pile of small limbs in the middle of the yard. It was a vulnerable spot for the little feller. Meanwhile, I found that its sibling had made its way into the brush on the hillside going to the lake, where it was being attended to by its parents. I contemplated what to do if neither parent came back for our stranded fledgling, and then a daring and heroic intervention by the father, as he flew onto the pile of brush, chirping away and directed his child to hop-fly to the relative safety of the forest. Hours later, I saw this little guy sitting comfortably up in the bough of a thin white pine. Would it and its sibling survive their first night out of the nest? As I sit here right now, my daughter has taken the car to spend a night with a friend at a yurt in Minnesota, but she will spend 1 more year in the nest. Outside, the warblers have been chirping all morning, presumably still guiding their little fledglings as they navigate this next phase of life.